do that. But you also delve really far back into your childhood. I mean, this book really starts off, you know, past the introduction, it starts off at the very beginning in your childhood with some really deeply personal experiences. Is that something, how did you begin to think about writing about this part of your life? I mean, you talk about, you know, your mother's eating disorder and what that did kind of to you, experiencing that, your relationship with your father and his kind of emerging sexuality. You know, how do you sit down and kind of go, okay, I'm going to codify these experiences?
When I first started out, there was sort of 3 essays and 3 pieces that I wanted to read in terms of kind of coming to terms with the idea of memory. One was Vivian Gornick, Situation in the Story.
That's like one of my favorite books.
It's incredible. In that book, especially at the beginning, she talks a lot about if you know who's writing, then you know why. And I think that's really important for memoir because you realize with each memory, and you know you're sort of attaching value to each instance of your life. There's such a multitude of selves that experience everything that we've experienced. And so depending on, you know, sort of the angle or the point of view of that experience, and you are many things, you know, in the beginning of the book, I wrote as a daughter. The other parts I'm writing as a musician, but that really helped, I think, with the fluidity and the pace of their narration. I also read Joanne Beard's Fourth State of the Matter, which I think is just one of the best essays ever written. And then lastly, I think her last name is Hampel, and she wrote, this is
Amy?
Not Amy Hempel.
Not Amy Hempel.
I think maybe Anne Hampel, Hampl, and she writes a lot about memory and the tricks, I guess, in terms of like applying, you know, just applying memory to story, because you know our memories are not like these fully constructed narratives. I mean, they're compartmentalized, and at the same time they're vast, but in our minds they're everything 360 degrees. When you start to write them,
yeah, they
flatten. And I found that very frustrating. You know, that's like here in my mind is the mansion, that's the story, and every time I write it, it feels like transcription that's just getting thinner and thinner. So I approached it very studiously, I guess is what I'm saying, and I also, I thought a lot about, like the beginning of the book, it starts with kind of a dramatic scene, and I wanted to build tension. Like I don't know, I thought about tone and syntax and tempo a lot, and set out to basically fill in vignettes that serve the story. And I left everything else out. There's plenty that I left out.
I mean, did you have to edit it yourself, kind of cut out the stuff that wasn't working, that wasn't doing work within the context of the writing?
I did, and then I had 2 great editors. One was Jeff Klosky at Riverhead, and the other was a dear friend of mine who's a creative writing professor, and she was kind of my main reader. Her name's Chelsea Johnson, and I would sort of send her chunks of the book, and she would say, like, you have too much about tour. You know, it's getting redundant. Like, and it is hard with tour, because tour is by nature redundant. And as you start to write about it, each moment can feel important, but really it's not crucial. And I think same with stories from your childhood. I think there's just things that just didn't serve anything, particularly the arc, or again, like not writing chronologically. You kind of have to pick moments that are illuminating. And I thought, like, another thing I think that Gornick talks about is not writing what you know, but writing what you want to know. And if you think about it from that perspective, and then you think, well, what does the reader want to know? What do I want to know? That, I think, helps in terms of content.
I think that one of the reasons this book succeeds, for me, is that it leaves so much space around these questions. Like, this is a book that is written from a posture of questioning, clearly. It does not purport to have all the answers. And you, because of the person you kind of embody yourself as in this book, you're engaging really deeply with kind of what you think about things, but also with not knowing, you know, the answer to all these things. And I feel like it's so much easier for readers to engage with that posture of writing. you know, rather than someone who's kind of coming down from on high and like, I know how it is and I'm going to tell you all the answers. So I found that it sounds like that's something that you were thinking about when you were writing it.
Is that a question? Yes.
It's an observation, sorry.
Yeah, no. No, I just wasn't sure whether to answer because I was like, yeah, that's a good observation. I'll just let you have that. George Saunders is he is a keen observer of and writes so eloquently about writing. And I do love when he's talking about the role of literature and he's saying like, you know, are people good or bad? Literature answers yes. Like they're not, and I love that. And I love the idea of contradictions existing in the same space. And I think I was aware of letting that breathe within the book and writing with a curiosity more so than writing with definitive answers. Even though I feel like there are insights, I didn't want it to be strident. And I think the humility that is very courses through the book. Humility has a way, I think, of it doesn't necessarily match up with truth or polemics. Like humility kind of allows for a looseness and a mutability that I think kind of switching out from that into something I think more decisive was okay for me. And I think even in a lot of my work, I sort of vacillate between a place of earnestness, which has kind of a sweetness to it, and then defiance, which is a little bit more severe. But I like kind of the relationship between the two.
It's good that you mentioned defiance because that's